Okay. All right. Good evening, everyone. I'm Caroline Charles, Community Relations Coordinator with the Planning Commission. Thank you so much for attending the Environmentally Sensitive Land Credit virtual public meeting this evening. We will be going over the proposed text amendment to Hillsborough County CPA 2104, which will eliminate the environmentally sensitive land credit, also known as the wetland density credit. We strongly encourage your questions and comments during this meeting, and they will be addressed immediately following the presentation. Questions and comments can be submitted anytime during the meeting by typing them into the chat box. And you will also have the opportunity to speak after the presentation by clicking the raise hand button. To raise your hand on a desktop, click on the participants icon at the bottom of the screen, and then select the raise hand button that appears at the bottom of the menu. For those logging in from a mobile device, click on the more icon at the bottom of the app, and then tap the raise hand button from the menu. And if at any point you're having difficulty, you can also write a message to us in the chat that you would like to speak. If we don't have an immediate answer to your question today, we will follow up with an answer within a few days. I will now turn it over to our presenter, Yanika Mills. She is a principal planner for the Planning Commission.
Good evening, everyone. I appreciate you joining me here this evening for this public meeting to discuss the environmental sensitive land credit that's being proposed for a text amendment change. Right now, we are initiating the public outreach phase of the proposed amendment in an effort to get your feedback and get the temperature of the proposed amendment. Again, I'm Yanika Mills with the Planning Commission. I'm a principal planner, and I am the staff planner for CPA 2104. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Before we begin, I'd like to thank others from the Planning Commission staff that are present on the call this evening for the dedication and hard work with the initial phase of this plan amendment. We have from our staff, environmental division staff members, we have policy and review division staff members, as well as other support staff. Today's presentation will last approximately 10 minutes, and then we will give an opportunity for comments and questions at the end. And those of you that have chosen to participate in tonight's meeting, I appreciate you attending. Thank you again. In this phase of the plan amendment process, staff will receive your feedback and continue to do so. The draft language for CPA 2104 can be found at the link on your screen. With your input and that of the input of the upcoming meetings from the Planning Commission, as well as the Board of County Commissioners meeting, this may result in some changes of the draft language. At that same time, at that same link, we have a project page where you can find up-to-date progress in the progression of this plan amendment. Next slide, please. The environmentally sensitive land credit has been in the unincorporated Hillsborough County Comprehensive Plan now since in some format, since the adoption of the 1989 plan. With the 1994 Evaluation and Appraisal Report, the language and method for calculating the credit had been rewritten to the standard that we see in the plan today. Most recently, a county consultant recommended a re-examination of calculating permitted densities on the net acreage rather than the gross acreage of parcels containing wetlands within the Waimama Village Residential 2 and the Residential Plan 2 future land use classifications. So that leads us to today. Comprehensive Plan Amendment 2104 was requested by the Board of County Commissioners, directing Planning Commission staff, the Development Service Department, and the County Attorney's Office to coordinate and prepare amendment to the future land use elements of the comprehensive plan in order to eliminate the environmentally sensitive land credit, also known as the wetland density credit, within the rural area. The purpose of this proposed amendment will be to protect sensitive rural and environmental areas and to strengthen the county's transfer of development rights program. Next slide, please. Though we frequently use the name wetland density credit, the proper term as outlined in policy 13.3 of the future land use element is environmentally sensitive land credit. This policy basically outlines a calculation that allows for parcels that contain 25% or over of wetlands to have the potential to receive a 25% increase of density or intensity on their site. One caveat to this is that parcels would need a wetland delineation as determined by the Environmental Protection Commission before an accurate density intensity potential can be determined. Currently, if you have a parcel that is below 25% wetlands, the calculation is based on the full gross density. However, if your parcel is over 25% wetlands, the calculation is based on uplands and given a potential 25% increase in intensity or density. Next slide, please. Here is an example of what the calculation would look like. On a 100-acre parcel within a future land use designation of residential 2, and that contains over 25% wetlands, that parcel would have the potential to receive a maximum of 187 dwelling units with the wetland density credit. However, that same parcel with the same acreage, same amount of wetlands would only be eligible for a potential to develop 150 units without the wetland density credit. Next slide, please. Under the proposed revisions, it is recommended that the policy language be modified so that whether a parcel containing over 25% wetlands or under 25% wetlands for those parcels within the rural area, the calculation would now be based on net developable land area as opposed to gross acreage. Next slide, please. Staff realizes that the proposed amendment has an impact. We are looking at it from all angles. In our initial analysis, we have been analyzing the percentage of wetlands within the future land use categories, as well as within the future land use categories within the rural area, as well as the size of those parcels, as well as which community planning areas will be affected. We are still, however, doing research on the, impact that it may have on the, which landowners will be affected the most. More information will be forthcoming. Data is available and will be posted on our project page website. Next slide. Thus far, some of the things we've been hearing as far as concerns from the community are how the amendment affects the ability to subdivide parcels of land for family members, how it affects your borrowing power, the number of units that can potentially be developed on your site, which allows banks to evaluate the amount of money that they'll lend to the operations of a farm. We've also heard that maintaining the rural character is very important. We've also heard that there is a large economic impact that the agricultural production provides, and that needs to be supported. Additionally, there are areas now characterized as wetlands that were artificially created in the past for water conservation programs with SwiftMud, reducing the upland acreage on some farms. So what happens with that, with those wetlands? We've also received comments from the Florida Farm Bureau Federation, and they share some of the same concerns about the reduction in property values, as well as an infringement on property rights. Next slide, please. To get additional information and updates as this amendment progresses, you can stay up to date by visiting the project page for HCCPA 2104 and visiting the Planning Commission website. Next slide. As for now, this is the current timetable that this plan amendment will follow. I will be before the Planning Commission as well as the Board of County Commissioners on next week. And the following month, I'll be before the Planning Commission and Board of County Commissioners for a public hearing. However, the schedule could change based on the feedback that we receive from the Board of County Commissioners. Next slide. After today's presentation, you will have the opportunity to submit comments by going to the project page for the environmentally sensitive land credit at this link. Additionally, on that page, you'll find that we will be continuously updating the status of information as it emerges. Next slide, please. Again, I thank you for your participation and your comments. And if you have any following questions after tonight's meeting, feel free to give me a call or an email at the information on the screen. With that, I believe we can open the floor for comments and questions. Thank you.
Unique, I think Mike Peterson has his hand up.
That is true. Yanika, I saw something in one of your slides that makes it sound, it could be interpreted improperly, that the consultants in the community may have suggested wetland credit elimination in the Waimama plan effort. But isn't it true that in reality, it was only the economic consultant who raised the issue as a vehicle with which to make TDRs perhaps more effective? And even then, it was not included in the draft recommendation of the Waimama plan until the board, or at least some of the board members, started pushing it so hard that then it was an after the fact addition to the last version of the Waimama community plan. Am I correct on that?
My understanding, Michael, or where I saw it first, yes, you are correct that it was recommended within the WTL study. Is that what you're referring to?
Right. Okay, because I'm a little worried about the impression given to the public as if this came from community planning efforts. In reality, it was a small portion of a larger plan.
It's not even in the WTLA study. That's the problem. The misrepresentation that WTL suggested eliminating the wetland density credit in its entirety is actually factually incorrect. They were specifically talking about intra-density parcels within the RP2 land use category. And they were talking about allowing that. It was very specific, where you have two non-contiguous parcels and allowing them to be combined to come up with a wetland percentage, and allowing the okay, sorry. It allowed what it specifically talked about. So let's say you had two pieces of property, one that had 30% of wetlands on it, and you had another that had no wetlands on it, and you would combine them together, and then none of the parcels would be treated as though they had more than 25% density credit. What the consultant said was you shouldn't do that. Before you transfer density, you should calculate it based on the net. So if you had a parcel that had more than 30%, you should be calculating the density using the environmentally sensitive credit policy and only transferring that amount of units over to the other parcel. That's what it's talking about. It doesn't have anything to do with the wetland density credit for purposes of whether it should be retained or not retained. They specifically talked about intra-transfer. And so, I mean, Melissa, I don't know if you read that any differently, or Planning Commission, you read that differently, but I pulled it up while we were sitting here, and it doesn't say anything about elimination of the wetland density credit.
No, Cami, I think that you characterized that correctly.
Does anyone else have a question or comment that they would like to make? Mike, your hand is still up, I see. Thank you. Mike, you're mute. If you wanted to talk, you're muted. You're trying to unmute. I know. I see you're saying that. Bear with us.
Am I there now?
You're there now, buddy.
Okay, believe me, it wasn't me. It was whoever the host is. Okay.
Okay.
So I wanted to first make that point because I'm a little worried how this is getting characterized to the public. So this was, let's be clear. This was a desire initiated by a portion of the board that the rest decided to let it play out a little bit. But this wasn't out of the Wild community plan or whatever. And I'm worried about how that's being characterized because it's becoming the tail that wags the dog in many conversations. I also don't understand, and while I've got the phone, if we're admitting that we're talking about properties that are likely to be developed, and hence why we're discussing credits for density, then it does fly in the face of anti-sprawl thoughts that we would be trying to minimize density yields if we're going to go ahead and use the land anyway. And so to strip a right that we've held for decades that was only a partial credit given to make sure that it wasn't a complete taking of someone's value, since you were otherwise taking the use away from these wetlands decades ago. I just think this is really a policy that wasn't thought through. And I hope many owners listening, at a minimum, if this proceeds, will at least go visit the property appraiser's office, because I think we need a reduction in taxes. I'm done.
Very good points, Mike. Thank you so much. Ron, I see your hand raised, but before you go on, Kenneth Parker has his hand raised, so I would like Mr. Parker to be unmuted so he can make his comments. Thank you. Mr. Parker, you are unmuted and should be able to make your comments.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir, we can.
Okay, well, thank you. I serve as the executive director of the Florida Strawberry Growers Association, and we have submitted comments and a letter, but a letter that was submitted late today was from the Hillsborough County Agriculture Economic Development Council, which I serve as vice chair. Mr. Dennis Carlton is chair of that council. I don't know that he was going to be able to participate tonight or not, but I wanted to read the letter that was submitted from the council to the Board of County Commissioners, the Planning Commission, and the staff. The Agricultural Economic Development Council has studied the wetland density credit removal and has developed the following list of concerns and recommendations. The elimination of density will have significant negative impacts on property values in rural Hillsborough County. Agricultural production will be harmed by this reduction in property values because producers take out loans on their land to run their businesses. The council recommends that at a minimum, staff study how reduced property values will negatively impact this important industry. Secondly, multi-generational families and small family farms will disproportionately bear the burden of removal of the wetland density credit. The council recommends that staff study the number of parcels in the rural area that will lose 50% or more of their density if adopted. The proposed action will increase urban sprawl, and inefficient uses of that will contribute to the decline of agricultural production due to the compatibility issues. By reducing the number of units available to meet demand in the rural area, more acreage will be needed to develop to meet the same housing demand. Among other parts of the comprehensive plan, Objective 4 of the future land use element states that rural area will provide areas for long-term agricultural uses. The council recommends that staff analyze whether the removal of the wetland density credit is inconsistent with all goals, objectives, and policies in the comprehensive plan regarding agriculture and the rural area. There is no net benefit to the environment by removing the wetland density credit. Wetlands, environmentally sensitive lands, are delineated and regulated currently by EPC, FDEP, SWIFMUD, and the Army Corps of Engineers. In fact, because of the potential for urban sprawl outlined above, it is likely that the removal of the wetland density credit will promote the development of additional lands, which will lead to development on additional parcels and in turn environmental impacts. The council recommends that staff determine the extent of these environmental impacts. Furthermore, the council views this proposed action to be in direct conflict with the Burt J. Harris Jr. Private Property Protection Act. The council recommends that staff and the county's attorney's office analyze the county's potential legal and financial exposure that may be required to compensate landowners for the inordinate burdens that will result from the removal of the wetland density credit. Page 2 of the comprehensive plan's legal status section states goals, objectives, and policies contained in the comprehensive plan shall be reasonably applied where they are economically and environmentally feasible, not contrary to the public interest, and consistent with the protection of property rights. The removal of the wetland density credit would be inconsistent with the comprehensive plan. The transition to a net density system will cause a cost burden on rural landowners who want to use their land because, as explained by the Planning Commission staff, a wetland delineation will be required before any determination can be made on a property's density. This will be extremely costly for rural and agricultural landowners, especially since many of these parcels are very large and require extensive resources. The council recommends staff study the cost of these delineations and how it will negatively affect rural landowners. Based on our findings and concerns as a council, we recommend leaving the wetland density credit in place. Please place this recommendation in the file for the comprehensive plan amendment. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your comments, Mr. Parker. Those are duly noted, and we appreciate you also having the letter sent to all those entities that you identified prior to your comments. I believe next in our, Mr. Weaver, you have your hand raised, so you will be the next person to be allowed to speak. So if our host could go ahead and unmute Mr. Weaver and make sure everyone else is muted to be allowed for Mr. Weaver to be clear to have a clear way to go ahead and talk for a while. Go right ahead, Ron.
Thank you, Mr. Garcia. Thank you, team. Thank you, staff. And I could not say it more elegantly than Kenneth Parker just did, quite frankly. I grew up in a home that my grandfather had given to my mom because we couldn't afford a lot. And it was basically the nature of the beast that we face right now is that a lot of families are going to lose the ability to give their family, all their family members lots because of this loss of density, an unnecessary loss of density, which quite frankly, occasionally boils down to fractions where you've got a second or a third child that you want to try to give a lot to from your homestead. And you've got 3/4 of a unit, which is worthless, or 7/8 of a unit is worthless. So even a 25% increase in density as a part of this discussion, because I think it was Commissioner Stacy White said, well, is this de minimis? You know, it's 25% de minimis. Not de minimis if you're the kid not getting a lot from granddad. So I believe that fractions are important in this case and do mean that it is, with all due respect to Commissioner White, for whom I have the highest regard, it is meaningful, and 25% density, and in some cases more, involved here. It is indeed a taking of property without compensation in violation of the 5th and 14th Amendments of the United States Constitution and Article 1, Section 10 of the Florida Constitution, as well as the Burt J. Harris Private Property Rights Protection Act, Chapter 70.01, which precludes governments from engaging in inordinate burdens of property, which this is for 8 reasons. Quickly, number 1, the banks will not lend except on density. An economic reality is you go down to get the capital for your strawberries, like we just heard from our fantastic farmers, and the bank says, I'll loan you based on the amount of your density, because if you don't pay us back, we're going to have to build houses on it in order to get the money back to our depositors. So the bank will lend on density. It's an economic reality. The second economic reality is it changes the cost of affordable housing. You can build houses more affordably in the marketplace if you have that additional crucial 25% density. Number 4, people have relied on this for 20 or 30 or 40 years. I must have counseled hundreds hundreds of people. When they count their density, they count the density bonus, as many other jurisdictions do. If people say, oh, but not all jurisdictions do, the ones that don't do it, quite frankly, they have higher densities in the first place than our enormous 1 unit per 5 in much of South Hillsborough County. Finally, I guess to close up, Mr. Garcia, thank you for calling on me. I believe that page 2 of your comp plan called legal status was mentioned previously by Ken. And quite frankly, it has a sister in the state comp plan, which all local plans have to be consistent with the state comp plan. So pull out, please, 187.301 from the C17, light reading tonight, or to put you to sleep. And 187.301 sub 17 is the state comp plan with which all local plans have to be consistent, which says thou shalt honor property rights in whatever you do in your comprehensive planning and in your land development regulations. And then finally, with respect to the nature of this beast, it seems such an unfair burden on folks who are struggling through COVID, who've been unable, you probably watched the numbers of millions of tons of ag that went to waste because they couldn't be moved quick enough during the first month or two of COVID. The enormity of the destruction of the agricultural community, disproportionately by COVID, with disproportionate infections and disproportionate hurt, to plague the agricultural community and the rest of Hillsborough County in the midst of COVID with this kind of devastation to their ability to borrow in order to get capital and the ability of others to get affordable housing, with all due respect, is something that we strongly recommend you not do. Thank you very much for calling on me, Mr. Garcia.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Weaver. The floor is open. Should anyone else have any comments at this time? I am looking to see if anyone has their hand up, or I see Travis Council very quickly went like that. So Travis, you have the floor. Let's go ahead and have you unmuted. You're not unmuted yet. There you go.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. I have been in front of y'all quite a bit here lately, and I'm going to keep my remarks very brief. I have put my remarks in writing, and you should have a copy of those. And I just would go along with most everything that's been said here tonight thus far. And I am disheartened to hear some of the same comments that I heard in a previous meeting that kept tying this back to, to a consultant and to a community plan. So I hope we can get the record straight on that. And that's my only comment. Thank you for the time to comment.
Absolutely. And your comments that you did want to make sure would be in the record. This is being recorded, so your comments definitely will be able to be accessed and viewed by everyone else. So we thank you for that.
They should be in writing. So hopefully you have them. So.
If you've emailed to them, absolutely. Unika's nodding her head. I think that we haven't commented. So
perfect.
Okay.
Thank you.
Perfect. Okay. So thank you very much for your comments. Who else might we have that would like to make any comments? I don't see. I've got so many people. All right, hold on one second. I am seeing Ms. Corbett would like to make some comments. Jennifer, did you want to make any comments? Because I didn't see your hand go up. Just nod. Let me know if you wanted to make some comments. Kind of, sort of. Okay, well, I'm going to put you on hold behind Cami because Cami actually went like that, and then you can come after her. Okay, Jen?
If Jennifer's going to go, I can just finish typing my comment. I was just typing a comment, and I didn't think I was going to finish before, but I was just going to make the comment that it occurs to me in this discussion about wetland density credit that perhaps a way to encourage density in the urban service boundary is to allow densities in the urban service boundary to not have to apply policy 13.3 and instead allow urban service area densities to be calculated on the gross regardless of the presence of wetlands. I'll just drop that there.
Okay, very good. I appreciate the input. Okay, Jennifer, we're going to unmute you and let you make some comments. Hold on one second. You're ready to go.
I'm ready to go. So I remember this several years ago because it was my 30th birthday that I spent until about 11:30 at night at a public hearing regarding the evaluation and appraisal report. There was a lot of discussion about the comp plan at that time and density. And we actually worked, I think, with the Planning Commission. I know we worked with USF to conduct a study on densities. And part of the discussion that resulted from that study was really set the stage for this policy discussion to happen. And at that time, wetlands were a very hot topic, and protecting those very environmentally sensitive lands was a top priority, which was the precise reason that this policy was included in the comprehensive plan. It was precisely this policy that was going to protect the sensitive wetlands, but also provide a mechanism for the landowners who at that time were in the very same predicament that we are listening to today, that they will be back in if something changes with this policy. And so I echo the concerns of my colleagues that let's not make any mistakes here. We all watch the tape and we all understand that this recommendation did not come from the study. This came from a commissioner who was misinformed or miscommunicated that this study said to recommend eliminating this policy. It does not say that, though. So that was an error. However we want to look at it, it was an error. So we're off and running on changing this policy because a commissioner made an error in their statement, and the recommendation was made in error after this study did not say anything about eliminating this policy, because it is the right thing to do if you want to preserve the environment. So my question is, if this is going to happen, what happens to those people over the last 13 years now, since this policy has been in place? What happens to those people that have been operating in good faith under the law and processing land? What happens to those people? Okay.
So it's an open-ended question. That's a hypothetical. So I don't think that's a hypothetical, Jen. So I don't really think that we can answer a hypothetical.
Well, is there something in the policy recommendation that would consider existing property owners? And I'm sure there's a lot of people on this call, and I'm sure there's a lot in the ag community that have been operating under the law as it stands. If the law changes, I'm just curious. I mean, I'm aware that this policy is open now. I'm aware that the history is changing, and I'm aware that the posture is changing, certainly in how we move forward with these policies. But if the question can't be answered now, I would strongly recommend that staff put together some recommendation to go along with this proposed policy change that captures some way to answer the questions that the existing policy or the existing affected property owners, what they can do, because you can't just change the law and then oops, sorry, now everything that you thought for the last 13 years no longer exists. That was my question.
Okay, yeah, well, duly noted. We have that comment recorded. We have someone taking notes. We do have your comment and concern question memorialized so we are taking notes on that. Anytime a policy is modified or changed or the law is changed, there's always going to be a cause and effect, of course. So it remains to be seen. Of course, you have to take it on a case-by-case basis how that will be addressed. So that's the best answer that I think I can give you at this point in time, because there's no real clear-cut answer, but I understand the concern within the question that you expressed to us. So appreciate that. I am looking to see who else has a question. I'm not seeing any more hands raised.
Mr. Weaver had his hand up. I don't know if he's withdrawn that.
I do not see Ron's hand up again. Oh, it's up now. Okay. Now you're teasing me, Ron. Okay. All right. So you want to speak again? So we're going to unmute Mr. Weaver and let him have another crack at making a comment.
In a word, those folks that have relied on this for 13 years, number one, Jennifer, they overpaid. They can't get it back. Number two, when they go to sell it, they may not be able to pay off their loan because they've lost that 25% density. Number three, banks may send a note saying we deem ourselves insecure because your collateral has gone from worth $500,000 to now being worth $375,000. Therefore, either make it up with other collateral or we're going to have to foreclose because we deem ourselves insecure because of the deterioration of the value of your collateral and your lost density. So there are 4 or 5 major legal complications for 13 years in relying upon that density by overpaying your bank loan. Your bank loan may be called, and you won't be able to sell it for what you've got in it.
Are you done?
I'm done. Complete.
Complete. All right, Ron, thank you for your comments. We really appreciate them. I'm looking to see if I have any other, it's difficult for people that are on the phone. I know but I'm not seeing for them to be able to let us know if they have a comment or not, because if they're on the phone, I don't know how they would be able to raise their hand or not, or to let us know that they have a comment because everyone is muted. Carolyn, can you help me out on that? I see you came up.
Yeah. So if you're on a mobile device and you'd like to make a comment, click on the more icon in the app. And then in the menu that pops up, you should be able to see a button that says raise hand. Or you can also type in the chat too in the app if you'd like to speak.
I am not seeing anyone else with their hand raised, or I'm not getting any signal from anyone that's on the phone.
Yeah, I don't see any other hands raised. So if anybody else would like to make a comment, please let us know, raise your hand, type in the chat so we can capture your comments.
Yeah, the chat is the most expedient way in case we do miss. I've got my hand raised.
Yeah.
In case it's the most expedient way in case you want to make a comment, because we're looking at this. I see your hand, Cammie. I do see your hand.
Thank you.
Okay.
I was suggesting, I mean, I don't know if everybody who's on the phone can even is on the app, or if they're dialing in. It might be worthwhile, just to make sure we don't miss anybody, that we just unmute everybody for a moment and then try again and ask the cell phone folks if they have any comments. Just a suggestion.
I really don't have any issue with unmuting everyone. What we can do is this: if we unmute everyone for like 10 seconds and no one says anything, I think I'm going to take that as no one has any comments. So is that fair, everyone, that I can see? I'm getting a kind of affirmation across the board. Okay, so if we could unmute everyone now, and we'll see if we have anybody say anything within the next 10 seconds, that would be great. I'm still seeing everyone muted, so I'm not seeing, I think it's slowly, everyone's getting unmuted. Okay, I'm looking at the little mics. So hold on, everybody. I'll let you know. I'll start the clock in a second. Hold on. I'm still seeing everybody muted so far. I'm seeing mics coming off slowly.
One point of clarification, Tony, I think as the host has unmuted people, it'll pop up with a window stating that you're now unmuted. And I think people, if they wish to speak, will have to physically click that before they'll show up as unmuted in the icon. So wanted to share that.
Okay. So if you look and your mic is showing red and you wish to not show red anymore, just go ahead and click on the little mic and that will help us out.
On the phone, do they need to click *6?
Thank you, Ron.
I'll just make a
Unmute
quick
*6.
comment. I hope that everybody on staff, I hope that you know that our comments, our concerns, and our frustration, please understand it's not aimed at you at all. You know, we really enjoy a great working relationship and we have a lot of respect for what you do. Our frustration is simply that this feels like it has been put together in such a way that's really, it's just not being very honest. And you know, that is of concern, especially when we're talking about the comprehensive plan. And I have no problem, and I don't think anybody else here has a problem in having meetings like this to talk about the merits of the policy. I'm happy to have that every day of the week. I'll even do it on the weekends. But to come at it like this, surreptitiously, that's what we're really frustrated with. So if we want to have more meetings, talk about the policy, why it works, why it doesn't work, great. Let's do that. But again, thank you very much for putting this together. And yes, we're frustrated, but it's definitely not frustration with you.
Appreciate that. Well, that's exactly why we go through the process. It's always good when we have an environment and an atmosphere where everyone is free to go ahead and express their concerns. That's part of the process. So thank you for your comments. Appreciate it. I do not see anyone else coming to the forefront, and I think some people have left because I'm looking at the count on this because I'm down to one screen. So if no one else has any other comments, we appreciate those that have been in attendance this evening. We appreciate your comments. We are, as part of this process, you know, we are having our workshop on the 9th with the BOCC, and we will be going before the Planning Commission on the 8th. And we're the messengers right now in providing as much information as we can from you all, and based on what we've gathered, whatever data is being provided to us by other resources to be able to give to the decision makers. So again, we appreciate your comments, and we're trying to make sure that we're clearly articulating what your comments are in the presentations that we do make to the decision makers. So again, thank you thank you. And if I don't think we have any other comment, I think that it will be it for the evening.
Tony, could you confirm those times again on the 9th and the 8th at the?
On the Planning Commission meeting on the 8th, that is a briefing. So that will be during our afternoon meeting, Ron. I don't know right now if it's at 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock yet. It shifts based on the amount of cases that we have that day or amount of items we have that day. The workshop, I believe, is usually at the workshop is usually at the terminus of the BOCC land use hearing. That's normally when we have it, unless there's a time certain that's been established in the afternoon. I frankly have not seen an agenda yet, Ron, to give you a specific time. As a standard though, you know, you've been to enough of these to know that usually after the land use hearing is when we have the workshop, unless there are a certain number of items that may take more time, then it will be rescheduled to like maybe an afternoon that same day. Or a separate day. If that does occur, we will be sure to let everyone know.
Thank you.
Adam said this afternoon it's after, and that board meeting is the March board meeting. If you recall, the January ZHM was canceled, so it's probably just PRSs and flats. So it's probably a little bit of a shorter meeting.
Yeah, but you know what?
I can attest it is a light agenda.
Okay, good. Good. So it's a light agenda. So right now, let's go with this. It's going to occur after the BOCC land use hearing, which should be, you know, sometime before lunch. If that does not happen, it will, you know how these things change in the spur of a moment, folks, when we're at these meetings and something that we think is going to last 10 minutes, last an hour and a half. So
Under
just
the
want-
Harry Cohen, don't rake me 6 hours rule. Harry Cohen, don't rake me 6 hours rule.
So, well, anyway, I just wanted to let you all, caution you all on that, just to be sure, because nothing is really certain for sure. But right now, that is usually the SOP is that we will have the workshop shortly after the conclusion of the BOCC land use hearing on that day.
Thanks all.
Okay.
Thanks for your
Thanks very-
patience with us. Thanks for your patience with us. Janice,
All righty.
vote for all of us. It's not against you guys.
All righty. Thank you all very much. Have a good evening. And if you have any questions, please direct them to Unica. She's left her email. And if you need any additional information, she showed you the link to the page regarding this particular plan amendment. Have a good evening.
Thank you, Tony. You too.
Bye-bye.